All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of the 5 Warrior Angels fantasy series published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. I'm coming to you today from Hollywood, California. We're in celebration of the Writers of the Future, volume number 39 that just came out. And my special guest is the legendary author Tim Powers. Welcome.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes. So my first question to you is, Writers of the Future, how long have you been involved with the contest, and in what capacity, and what do you think it means to the fantasy and science fiction genre as a whole?
Well, I've been involved with it since, I think, 1986 as a judge, and from 86 on also as on and off instructor. I've been an instructor for some years in a row and then not, and currently I've been an instructor for, I think, the last 10 or 12 years. Okay. The unique and valuable thing about the contest is that since it's open only to previously unpublished writers and has a panel of very distinguished judges, Orson Scott Card, Robert Silverberg, etc. It's a beautiful way for unpublished writers to achieve quick prominence, because the stories that are selected are published in the widely distributed anthology, and ordinarily it's almost overwhelming challenge for an unpublished writer to get to the professional status, but because there's so much competition from more established people. But with this one, it's open only to newcomers and gives them a real excellent boost. And in the 39 years it's been going on, there's any number of writers who started through it and who have gone on to substantial careers. I just think of Karen Joy Fowler,
Patrick Rothfuss. Myself, Brian Lee Durfee.
Certainly. Yeah, there's, if you leaf back through the old volumes of it, the names which were newcomer beginners then are recognizable now as substantial writers in the field.
I think our mutual friend Dave Farland.
Dave Farland, right, and there's one, I'm trying to...
And Eric Flint.
Eric Flint, and...
Yeah, there's a whole bunch.
Who was it collaborated with Arthur C. Clarke? I'll remember the name halfway through here.
Yeah.
But yes, any number of writers got their first foothold through the contest, and it's still there for newer writers still to get that.
That's been going for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to have you on my channel today, because you have written one of probably my most favorite pirate adventure story of all time, and that is on Stranger Tides. And I'll do a bigger cover there. What was the inspiration for Stranger Tides? Why did you write it? And how do you feel it turned out? Because I think it's one of the best pirate adventures ever.
Oh, bless your heart. Well, anytime I'm planning a book, I look for some area that seems to offer a lot of colorful locales, details, characters. And so, of course, Caribbean pirates in 1718, you had Blackbeard, you had the whole Caribbean, the interesting situation with the Buccaneers versus the Royal Navy. And since I write fantasy, I thought voodoo and Fountain of Youth. So I researched the daylights out of all those topics, and found that it did indeed have lots of opportunities for storms at sea and sea battles and cutlass fights on beaches and
shipwrecks and ships sinking
and zombie sailors. Yeah, it was a very rich environment to write a book in.
So one of the things that first attracted me to the book when I was a kid and I saw it on the shelf was this James Gurney. Well, I'll give you a big version. I'll put a big version of it right here so you can see it.
That Gurney cover is priceless.
It is amazing.
I
love it. It's one of my favorites.
You can stare at it for 10 minutes getting details. In fact, I think that cover, that painting, must have figured largely in Disney's decision to make the movie.
Okay.
Because you can't look at that cover and fail to think, wow, oh man, you gotta do more with that.
So let's talk a little bit about that, the movie experience. So this, On Stranger Tides, one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, it's called On Stranger Tides.
Right.
What's your tie-in to that?
Well, after the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie came out, Curse of the Black Pearl, Disney Studios got in touch with my agent and said, if this becomes a series, and we do a 4th installment, we'll buy Powers' book. And so my wife and I made sure to see the next 2 movies on the first day to add to how successful they must look. And then fortunately they did do the 4th installment, and they did buy my book. And the movie, of course, couldn't have a whole lot to do with my book, because by the 4th movie, the franchise had established characters which were not
in
the characters in my book. But they did use Blackbeard, and they did use the Fountain of Youth, and they did buy my book. So
there you
God
go.
Bless them.
Yeah. So now you're also, a legend in the field for not just pirate books, but for a lot of science fiction and fantasy books. What are some of your favorites that you've done? Well,
I like to, just as with the pirate book, I find a situation that looks intrinsically rich and colorful, and then see if I can't set a book in that situation. One of my books, The Anubis Gates, involves 19th century London and kind of Dickensian, Robert Louis Stevenson type underworld with, of course, a supernatural element added. Another rich area was Las Vegas, gambling, poker, the gangster history of Las Vegas, and a supernatural element. That was a book called Last Call. And
did you do a thriller called Declare?
There was a book called Declare, which in fact also I found a beautifully rich situation to set the book in, which was espionage in the from World War II up through the 1960s with Russia and British Secret Service and Arabia and Beirut and Paris and supernatural. And so that also proved to be a singularly rich pile of stuff to use in writing a novel. So those 3 books, Anubis Gates, Last Call, and Declare, I think have been the most successful at that. Though I do have a book coming out in September, which also I think benefited from that kind of rich field. It's to be called My Brother's Keeper, and it involves the Bronte sisters living in Yorkshire and in total anonymous obscurity, writing Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, Tenant of Wildfell Hall. And the research kind of led me to conclude that werewolves were involved.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, did you, in your research, do you do research travels? Did you...
Not exactly.
Okay.
My wife and I have been to the
Yorkshire.
Bronte parsonage in Haworth in Yorkshire.
Well, I could consider that research then.
Except at the time, I didn't know I was going to write a book about it. But I remembered I have some photographs. I can call it a research trip.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of castles in Europe too, and there are castles in my book, so
yeah, so that's research.
Yeah. So who were some of your influences as you were becoming a young writer? And
well, my entry into the field was when I was 9 years old, and my mother got me a copy of Heinlein's Red Planet.
Okay.
And that simply fixed all my dials permanently. Since then, I read spy fiction, detective fiction, a lot of that stuff, but I can't think of a plot to write that is not science fiction or fantasy. And since Heinlein, I think big influences have been Lovecraft, Fritz Leiber, Theodore Sturgeon, Philip K. Dick, Henry Kuttner, Eric Frank Russell.
Over the years, have you gotten to meet a lot of these people?
Yeah. Luckily, I went to my first convention when I was 19 in 1971, and so I was able to meet, over the years, Leiber, Asimov, Heinlein, Bradbury, Frederick Pohl, Jack Williamson, Aldous Budrys, etc. And it's always been dazzling. You know, you meet somebody who you grew up just admiring beyond words, and there they are in person. I generally lose the ability to speak. I just kind of go, oh my God, man, your books. And they wonder who is that nice little incoherent person.
Well, I've been there too. I mean, when I was growing up, my favorite author of all time was Tad Williams, and
oh yeah.
And when I met him, and he read my book and gave me a blurb for my second novel, I think I was more excited for that blurb,
yes,
than even getting published at
yes.
all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
All right. So that's probably all we've got time for today on the show. So I really appreciate you coming in here and
oh, well, thank you, Brian.
and it was good to meet you again.
Yeah.